that is the case that our members would like us to make around jobs and prosperity and growth. It isn't about making a political statement. So I think that the position that we have is an extremely sort of clear and simple one.
Are you breathing a sigh of relief that a powerful, influential organisation with so much support from businesses who want to remain in are not going to politically align themselves?
Well, not necessarily, because, you know, when I was a junior barrister, we had to prepare cases on a regular basis that required expert witnesses. And when you had an expert witness, you had to have an expert that was actually generally right on the issues that we talked about. So when you look at the CBI, they were wrong on the ERM, they got it massively wrong. They were wrong on the euro, and even almost 100 years ago, they were wrong on the gold standard. So if I was trying to present them as a case before a judge, they would actually throw out the fact that on almost every major political and economic issue in the last 100 years which they've espoused a view, they've been wrong. But one other point, they would also be asked whether they have a conflict of interest in this particular case. And it is right, and I'm sure that Carolyn would say, that they have received over £800,000 from the European Union, whether it's for research or other ways, so that would also be regarded as a conflict of interest. So I think the British public will say to themselves, when the CBI speaks, they've been wrong before, they're wrong now, and they have a conflict of interest.
What do you say?
Well, I come back on both of those. I mean, on the issue of conflict of interest, there is absolutely none. We provide a commercial service to a small part of the European Union, less than 0.5% of our revenue. It's an absolutely ludicrous claim to say we have a conflict of interest. And in terms of the position, you know, the euro was a very, very different question.
The euro?
A very, very different question. What we're facing now is an issue of we've enjoyed a period of real prosperity as part of the European Union. And what many businesses up and down the land are saying is that they can prosper within the European Union. They want it to reform further, but they can prosper. And actually the prospect of uncertainty that will come from triggering Article 50 and not knowing what the alternative is just too great.
You say this is a very different case to that of the euro, but the arguments that you're using are identical. You're using the fear-mongering arguments of the euro, that if we didn't take on the euro, then Britain would actually fall into a mire and never be successful in the future. You'd actually be saying that business wouldn't be able to trade with the European Union. We'd have no access to these markets, notwithstanding that the single market comprises two distinct elements. First of all is the free trade element under the customs union, which only Belarus and Russia is not part of, from the non-EU Iceland to the non-EU Turkey. Are you saying we'd be excluded that alongside Russia? And then you have the single regulatory regime, which we have very little influence over at the moment. So those arguments are identical to that of the euro. They're just being replicated today.
I don't accept that at all. What the European Union gives at the moment is a guarantee of totally tariff-free access to 500 million consumers. And the moment that Article 50 is triggered, that guarantee goes. We can't even go back and say, actually, we've changed our mind, we'd like to go back on that.
Right. 50 says for 2 years, we're OK.
Steve, I just want to ask you, though, because when you say that the CBI have been wrong on issues and you cite the euro, what about the figures from the poll, just looking at the views of business? It's always the case that people who want to leave the EU say small businesses support that and bigger business support staying in the EU broadly. But the figures are quite damning, aren't they, in the poll? I mean, just 6% of firms in the CBI survey think leaving the EU would be in the best interest of the UK economy as a whole. Why do so few businesses of the ones that were polled back Brexit?
Well, that's not necessarily the case. I've seen quite a few, and you've actually had many on the show here that actually show that they support leaving the European Union. But actually looking at the analysis of those figures are quite interesting. Over 95% of the businesses in the UK are businesses less than 50 people. But if you look at 73% of this poll, that they consist of businesses over 250 people, which is 0.1% of the business community.
But why do they not back Brexit?
Well, it comes down to the arguments that they hear from government affairs officials.
Really? They don't know their own minds?
From lobbyists who keep telling them, as I heard when I was working in investment banks, or indeed when I was chairing the Hedge Fund Lawyers Association, that these companies would not be able to trade. We'd have tariffs imposed upon us. Well, none of this is the case. I saw it before as a lawyer advising companies. I was often in conflict to those lobbyists who have a financial interest enjoying their time going to Europe than those like the CFOs and ourselves as lawyers who actually had to deal with the issues and the regulations that compounded the business.